Welcome back. Joining us this morning for a very important conversation on the Humanitarian Ministry and what it's doing for the Nigerian people. They have a very interesting mandate, and that mandate has to do with the improvement of the quality of life of the Nigerians. The bulk of those Nigerians are living below the poverty line. How is it going to be doing that? What policies are in place? Well, Mr. Nantanwe Yilwada, the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, joins us this morning.
Thank you, Kelly.
Good morning.
Good having me here.
It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you, Kelly.
And also joining us on the program, you said Jake Epele. He's actually joining us to give a perspective for the people living with disabilities, the founder of the Albino Foundation. He's joined us via Zoom from Istanbul. Good morning, Uncle Jake.
Hi, Kelly. You kept saying the Albino Foundation. We've changed.
Oh, we have?
Like the ministry, the Humanitarian Ministry have changed. We have changed.
Oh, I see.
We are referred to as TAF Africa.
TAF Africa?
Yes. Yes.
Fantastic. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Kelly.
I'm going to start off talking with you really about people living with disabilities and the Tinubu administration. Has there been an improvement? I know that over the years you have seen some things get better, but there's a lot of things that you've been asking for. What's that been like? What's the status really of the person living with disability under the Tinubu administration, especially with all these economic challenges that we're facing?
Thank you for that beautiful question, and I want to also say good morning to the Honorable Minister. I think what has changed is the fact that we now have a minister who understands the needs of the people. We do now have a minister who is experienced and willing and ready to deliver on the dividends of the humanitarian ministry. And I think I want to say that the president got it right this time, because he chose someone who understands the community. He chose someone who is part of the community. The Honorable Minister there has some form of disability that you will get to know in the course of time. But then we are on a trajectory to getting it right. Hopefully, the people around him will work like him to get things in motion for persons with disability, whether it's data, concrete intervention, the cash transfer. I think Prof is set to get things much better than his predecessors. And at the end of the day, our job is to watch him, hold him accountable, and tell him if he's going wrong, and also praise him where he's going, where he's doing right.
Let me come back to you, Honorable Minister. That's a lot to put on your shoulder.
Thank you, Kelly.
In addition to the things that you're supposed to do, because
yes.
I was looking at what your ministry is set up for.
Yes.
Tackle social inequalities.
Yes.
Reduce poverty,
yes.
Empower the most vulnerable Nigerians,
yes.
Developing policies aimed at improving the quality of life of those living in poverty.
Yes.
And we're talking about more than half of our population, according to the World Bank, living below the poverty line.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit. Let's start off with what Mr. Pello has been talking about,
yes.
the people living with disabilities.
Yes. Now, like he said, and he rightly put it, the people with disability are among the most vulnerable, because I used to tell them that if you're poor and disabled, it's like having double jeopardy. And if you're poor and you're disabled and a woman, double jeopardy. So we took note of this. Triple jeopardy. So we took note of all this in our response to the people with disability, to ensure that we integrate them into what we're doing. I met with them and we set up a team jointly between all the groups in the disability community and my own ministry, how we can mainstream them into our activities, like the conditional cash transfer we're doing. How do we mainstream them into it? We have also the Empower. How do we mainstream them into it? We have also the loan scheme that we provide for agriculture and NSME and also nano businesses. How do you mainstream them into all those? And then we have cash for the grant for vulnerable group. How do you mainstream them into all these activities? Now, I keep on saying that, this ministry has actually three tripods that it stands on. Number one is humanitarian aids. Number two is peace building. And, the third and the last tripod is sustainable development and empowerment. Now, in these three tripods, you must bring the humanitarian, the people with disability into this three tripod. People that are extreme in poverty, and you need to save their lives, they need humanitarian aid. But humanitarian aid cannot keep you for life. So you must bring sustainable development and sustainable empowerment so that you permanently move them out of poverty. Because it's like you have a fire brigade. They come in and quench the fire. After the fire, do you leave the house unconstructed and people live under the house like that? No. You must reconstruct the house in order to people come and live in and have sustainable means, because the fire brigade, the fire service just quench the fire.
Yes.
It's just a stopgap. Now, but in long term, the peace building stops the humanitarian effects. So anything that can stop the humanitarian, effects is part of the peace building mechanism. So we must have these three tripods running in the ministry, which we've discussed with them, and that's what we're working on right now with them.
He said working with people with disabilities is a little personal for you because he says you have a disability.
Yes. I entered secondary school as a disabled student. I don't have sense of smelling. I can't smell. And I was a science student. So they have to work. I wrote my work as a disabled student. I went to university as a disabled student. So anywhere they put smelling in chemistry and other services, in the sciences, they have to get an aid from me that will give me alternative practical. And that was what aided me. And that was how I was supported to reach this peak in my life. So assuming I didn't have that support structure, I wouldn't have risen from secondary school into university, even becoming a professor in the university.
The support structure for not having the sense of smell, this was in Nigeria?
Yes.
Is that still existent today? Are there kids right now who don't have a sense of smell like you do, who have this aid that can help them? You became minister. Look at what that aid did.
My secondary school then have a community of disabled students, the blind and others, especially not the blind students. And I was privileged to be among the disabled people. So my seatmate was a blind student, Pam. And so while my teacher aids me in my chemistry work, I was supposed to aid another disabled person. So I aid him in reading his notes out so that he can type them on the braille. So it was a community of support system that was set up in the school that can support all disabled students in the school until they graduate. And the school doesn't, they don't stop at secondary school. If you're a disabled student, you register as disabled student, they will support you up to university.
That's fantastic. I mean, I'm still the same question. I mean, do we have that sort of support system now?
Is that what we're discussing with them, with the community? We said the community, we must set up a structure from the system, because from education. So supportive structure doesn't mean just structures, buildings, access to buildings, access to this. It's access to education, access to health, access to facilities, access to jobs, access to everything. If I'm disabled, how do I, so these are the critical issues that we need to look at. How do we support a disabled student so you have access to quality education? How do you work with Ministry of Education as my ministry? Because my ministry actually encompasses all the ministries.
And a lot of collaboration.
Yes, so I need collaboration with almost all the ministries,
yes.
For the vulnerable group to have access to education, have access to water, have access to health, have access to everything.
I want to come back to Mr. Epele. You heard what the minister said. It does seem like he understands. It's interesting, important even. So the people with disability have a seat at the table. That's what this means. How do you feel about
Yes.
some of the things that you've heard, and what prospects do you have? Are there particular demands? I know we have to let you go soon because you're at the airport. Are there
Yes.
particular demands that TAF Foundation have for the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and the needs of people living with disability?
Let me start by giving credence to what he said about whether it's the person he supported, Mr. Pam. Not only did he say it, he called Pam and I spoke with Pam. Also to say that the Honorable Minister, when he keeps making references to people, disabled people, he's intentionally doing that as a communication expert that he is, to ensure that across board people will have understanding the group of people he's talking to. But I mean, he knows, and the Nigerians knows that the right phrase is persons with disability, whether it's a student with disability, and all that. However, this is one minister that is serious as at today. Because I'm not here to give a stamp of authority but I'm just stating the obvious. We, as a community, he didn't want to start any implementation without first engaging us. And so I led the community of persons with disability, despite his schedule, despite how tight things were. He hosted us in his office and listened to us, everyone make intervention. At the end of the day, he set up a committee, a strategic committee of credible leaders in the community to work with him. And he gave us his word that I'm not going to do anything without you. That's the kind of public officers that I want to see. And I am ready, and with other colleagues of mine, to ensure that for the first time, we will get it right. Maybe you know that I used to be a very bad critic of humanitarian ministry. I used to call them Ministry of Inhumanitarian. But at this time around, and that's my nature, if you do well, I praise you. You don't do well, I criticize you. I have nothing to gain, I have nothing to lose, other than for us to ensure that persons with disability will get their rightful place. And we have found a minister, and we are grateful to President Bola Tinubu, and the community will work with trust to ensure that we will raise our head, beat our chest to say that now we can count on genuine intervention. I mean, he is a better orator than me. By the time he opens up and tells you the plans he has as it regards to data and how he intends to bring integrity to the data, the social register, then you will know that this gentleman knows what he's saying. And of course, some other aspect he didn't tell you, which is the trip that I'm making, is also the fact that he's doing a lot for refugees, for IDPs,
Absolutely,
and in the migrant space. So maybe tomorrow, myself, Honorable Minister, and a couple of other Nigerians, where he's leading the delegation, we can actually tell you what is happening in Portugal, because he is taking over as the chairman of the Rabat process, and I'll be very honored to watch that happen.
I mean, it's a conversation that we will continue to have, but I do have to let you go there, Mr. Jekepele. Thank you so much for joining us on the program, and good luck with all your engagements in Istanbul.
Thank you. I'm on my way to Portugal. Honorable Minister, I'll see you tomorrow. God bless you, and God bless Nigeria.
Jekepele from TAF Africa. So let's get down to it. Listen to Mr. Jekepele. He does rebuilding hope. Renewed hope.
Yes.
Renewing hope in the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. I want to start with that. Because over the years, like he said, he used to call it the Ministry of Inhumanitarian Affairs. And for many Nigerians, when we hear humanitarian affairs, we roll our eyes. What are they trying to steal this time? Why is this? Sadia Umar, hold on. Sadia Umar investigated for mismanagement of public funds, before.
Yes.
Better Edu suspended after allegations of diversion of that 585 million into personal accounts.
Yes.
So these incidents have cast a bad image on the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. How can Nigerians trust you?
I'm not asking Nigerians to trust me. I'm asking Nigerians to listen to what we're doing and watch what we're doing and judge us by what we're doing, You know, on Friday, I was in Benue. And because if you recall, last year I was on this, in this studio, in a similar studio in Lagos, and I told Nigerians that we're working on durable solutions for the IDPs. Because I believe that giving handout to the IDPs will keep them there forever. But creating sustainable livelihood for the displaced persons is a long-term plan that Nigeria needs to run. And we started with durable solution for the IDPs. What did we do? We designed a program. We ran a program, and we did a concept note. We shared with states that have displaced people. We shared with international community. We shared with community of NGOs and international community. We discussed with everybody, and they bought into it, and they believe that it's possible. So we started implementation this year, January. Our first port of call was in Benue State. In Benue State, what did we do in Benue State? Very simple. The IDPs were given land by host communities. So we chose 6 locations that have large number of IDPs. 30% of the land, the IDPs, the host community contributed land as equity. The land was developed jointly by the state government and our ministry. The people were asked to form cooperative. They took ownership of the land. The essence of the joint ownership of the land by the host community IDP is for coexistence, social coexistence by the host community and the IDPs. They provided inputs, they provided all that they need.
Yes.
Then at the point of harvest, who now take 70% of what they will harvest as a cash component. We give them the cash. 30% will be their food component. They cannot have the cash. It will be taught financial literacy. They will choose whether to maintain farming or go into other businesses. And that's the only way we can get a sustainable way of moving these people out of poverty. Because people are being impoverished. You can imagine somebody who was having a farm, who was having an earning, who even have houses, may even have cars and the rest. Overnight, everything he ever had was destroyed. He was burned and destroyed, and he was displaced. He now started a new life.
Oh, yes.
And that's the reason why we need the durable solution for the IDPs as sustainable means of livelihood for them.
Yes, I remember the Benue State governor was very excited at the time when this conversation was going on. But I want to come back to your ministry.
Yes.
Because one of the things that I've heard you say is that there's a restructuring that has happened.
Yes.
What kind of restructuring is happening? And the reason why I'm asking this is because we need to be able to trust the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. We don't want to see it as a place where people come siphon what they want to siphon and go. A place that doesn't really look out for the people. Accountability mechanisms. We need to know. Till today, when you hear people talk about the humanitarian, they keep talking about this school feeding program that was happening during COVID. What kind of virtual school feeding was going on? Was it happening while they were in their houses? You know, so there's a lot. I'm not saying you should respond to that directly, but there's a lot of things that have made the ministry one that we do not trust.
That's what I'm giving you the reforms we're making.
But the thing is, when it comes to these reforms and these interventions, when the other ones, the former ministers, they had tears in their eyes when they were telling us about the reforms that they were going to do. We believed it as well. What's different? What kind of restructuring have you done in that ministry to ensure that we can trust the work that you do?
The first reform we did was, number one, we suspended cash
transfer.
So you can't carry cash to give anybody.
Okay.
So now you must make a transfer through a valid account. That's number one. Number two, before now, you can be paid without having a valid identity, digital identity. Now it is required that you must have either a BVN or an NIN minimum before you are paid to enable us to track and trace the people who are making payment. The reason why we need the NIN and all this data from these people is because we are paying household. A household contains the husband, the children, and the mother. That's a whole household. Now, if you pay a household, we don't want the household to be repeated in terms of payment. If we're paying somebody from the house, that same another person from that house should not be repeated. So you have, if I pay a son as a caregiver, or I pay the mother as a caregiver of that house, I shouldn't pay a second person in that family again. The person should not end another from the conditional cash transfer. Yes. So it aids transfer and distribute the wealth more among the people than concentrating, because sometimes maybe for one reason or the other, people want to circumvent the process. They will choose, they will repeat those names among themselves and just change other surname on the rest. But with the caregiver capturing of data, it allows to track everybody who is involved in the payments. So that has helped us to reduce the number of people who were being repeated, And then secondly, you can also have a trail of the payments you are making. That's an audit trail. Because if you can audit the payment, it means that you have a challenge. So giving digital identity help us to reduce fraud. That's number 2. Number 3, we also want to bring financial literacy into what we're doing. So that these people are not just giving the money, but there's financial literacy to help them to reinvest the money. If somebody's a farmer in the village and he has 75,000 being paid to him in a year, he can now plan how he can buy fertilizer, how he can expand his farm, how he can improve his crops. If maybe a woman, she can also plan maybe a small business, a nano business, a micro business. They can come even as a cooperative and work as a group to expand their businesses and even invest. And then finally also, we also create that our program should be interconnected. If you're under conditional cash transfer and you earn it for a year and you give financial literacy, we have a loan scheme that is interest-free and collateral-free.
Yes.
And under the JIP. And so 0 interest, 0 collateral, only a corporation will form, which means that these people can graduate from just earning a handout into taking a loan and establishing businesses and exiting out of poverty. So these are the reforms we're making to ensure that these people keep exiting out of poverty instead of continuously paying them money.
So I want to be able to look at what programs are, because on your website there's the NPower.
Yes.
CCT, conditional cash transfer.
Yes.
JEEP.
Yes.
And the school feeding program.
Yes.
Are there other interventions?
And GVG.
GVG.
Yes.
What's that?
That's Grant for Vulnerable Group.
Okay. Yes.
Yes.
So those are the programs that we have ongoing.
Yes.
How did you get the people that are supposed to benefit from this?
That's just one. We have several agencies.
Oh yes.
We have the National Commission for Refugees, Migrants and people, and IDPs.
Yes.
And then we have the Commission for People with Disability. Then we have the Center of Senior Citizens.
Oh yes.
And then we have the SDG. Yeah. They're all under my ministry.
So when we talk about the people who are supposed to benefit from these social safety nets, that's what they're called. I know the World Bank talking about it recently and saying this is the catalyst, this is the way to build societies. We need social safety nets.
Yes.
We start to think about our social register.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that's another issue that many Nigerians have. Do we have a functional register of the vulnerable in society?
Currently we have a register that was generated. It took almost 8 years to generate that list. It has 19.8 million people on the social register. Now, but when you have a list, you need to validate that list. And for now, people that are validated are only about 1.2 million. So we need to validate the entire register so that we can get the actual people that are supposed to benefit from it, authenticate their location, their houses, where they are, and we capture them on GPS location of their homes, so that we're sure that these people exist. These people are actually they as poor as they claim, because there's a social indices of judging poverty, like access to water, access to health, access to education, access to economic facilities. So all these things are indices that are used to judge the level of poverty, so that you can now pick the poorest of the poor in society, and you can also group them into the urban poor and the rural poor.
Yes.
So these
very important distinction between the urban poor and the rural poor.
So these are things that must do for us, in having a social register. And after you've done that, then we must also work on providing interface between these data.
This register, so I want you to get Nigerians to hear from you directly.
Yes.
Where did the names come from?
Now, we have a focal person in each state that normally the state government gives to the ministry. Then in the local government, you have people that they are under the social department that are the focal person in each local government. Then the ministry normally procure a consultant who works with these people, so that they will go down to communities and rural poor. But how do you generate the list first? Normally, NBS generate what they call the poverty rate of the country. Then you cannot just spatially distribute this poverty rate across communities. When you distribute it, then you can now use that list to pick communities that are among the poorest of the poor. So you now look at the percentages and generate names based on those percentages across the country. By the time you do that one, you can generate a list of poor people on the social register. But you now validate, because generating lists is another thing. Validation gives you the indices that you can use to judge individual within that social register.
So this register, it has nothing to do with the state governments. It's your officials in the local areas that are generating these names. So now, it's not one of those.
In each community.
When
they go to a community, they will gather the community into a town hall meeting. They will ask the youth to meet separately, the women to meet separately, and the men to meet separately. Then each of them will define what's called poverty in their community. Because what is called poverty in the city
is not the same.
It's different from what is poverty in the village. What is called poverty in Lagos is different from what is called poverty in Maiduguri. So when you define what is called poverty in their community, then they will rank people in their community from the poorest to the half, from the half-not to the people that have it. So when you rank them from the poor to the poorest, then the community will not, the group will pick the three names and compare. If your name appear among the poor in the three groups of the community, it means the community has judged you to be truly poor.
And this is a digital process. This is strictly digital.
This first phase is manually captured.
So this is the first phase.
Because you hold a meeting with the community.
Then after,
the community will now write this thing. When you write it, they will display the names to the community that generate. So the community will validate that these are the names that will truly generate. After the validation, they will now carry the names down to our ministry. So it's at this point that we now go for validation, that the names that these people claim that they gave are the same names that they're given to us, so that along the line, no name is changed.
So the social register is not a political construct?
No, it's not.
My colleague in Lagos has a few questions for you.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Kayla. Allow me to start from one of the conversations you're having. It's related to what you're talking about, Kayla, and that social register thing. Remember, I think in the wake of this administration, the governors had doubts about the social register, and then they said they wanted to come up with theirs because for whatever reason they didn't believe in the register that existed at the time. So, Honorable Minister, in terms of partnership with states, particularly about this social register thing, what roles would you say that the states have played in coming up with what we have now, if we are still having struggles validating the register that you have?
The social register is related by the states, not even by the federal government, because we have the focal person that is appointed by the state. We have the social department in the local government generated by the state. Now, what we do is that after mining names, after generating names from the social, at the local government to the state, and then to us at the national here, we now mine these names from the poorest. We pick the poorest of the poor, and then we now go for validation. When you go for validation, before you come back and pick the list, we don't actually pick these names based on political party or political affiliation, and that's the reason why most people want us to bend for political reason. Unfortunately, it's a partnership between us and international community. The World Bank are involved, international community are involved, CSOs are involved, and it's not just a ministry activity. So it may not fall under a political circumstances that maybe people want us to have. Some people want us to bend and allow the governors or the state just generate a list and send. These lists are generated by, it's a conditional cash transfer. Conditions are attached to you qualifying to benefit from the social intervention, the social safety net. So for now, we will not bend to allowing any political, affiliation or attachment to this conditional cash transfer. Poverty doesn't know political party. Poverty doesn't know tribe. Poverty doesn't even understand the grammar we're blowing. A poor person is a poor person. I want to restrict ourselves to just the poverty indices rather than the political affiliation or tribal affiliation or regional affiliation. So we want to stand by the indices that were defined by the government and the World Bank as criteria for selecting the poorest of the poor in the society.
So if this list is having this challenge of validation, as you say, one then begin to wonder where the list from the states came from. If according to you there are about 9 million people you said on the register, and you've only been able to
19.8 million. Okay. Like I told you, this thing has two stages.
Just to
the first stage is the social register.
So you can answer everything together. Just so you can answer everything together. Okay. So you say about 20 million people, almost 20 million people on this register, but you've only been able to validate. Yes, 19.8. But you've only been able to validate about 2 million people, you said. How come the disparity? That's the question, sir.
Okay, before now, payments were made without any form of digital identity. It wasn't a condition for payment. But to ensure that we avoid the mistakes of the past that lead to corruption and other malversation of the process, we needed to bring some credibility to the payment. So we requested that we needed to get a digital identity of people who are involved. And that's the reason why we introduced that all the beneficiaries must have either an NIN or a VIN. For now, people that we've captured that have both NIN or NIN are about 1.4 million. Now, these 1.4 million are people that have digital identity already and they can be paid. Now, if you recall, last year, they paid about 5.6 million people, household leaders. That's 25,000. But when this thing was introduced later, towards the end of the year, which was the condition, we could only pay 1.4 million that have the digital identity. But this is the most important thing. This we were working with NIMSI to do that. NIMSI has already deployed our 1,000 systems, and they are buying additional 3,000. And they approve additional 3,000, making 6,000 devices that will be deployed across the country to capture the digital identity of these people. That's harvesting digital identity of these people, so that we ensure that payments are made based on credibility. And the president has asked us to pay 15 million households. And like I keep on saying, each household in Nigeria is run between 4 to 5 people on average. So we're targeting that if you are paying 15 million households, multiplied by number of people in the household, we're targeting about 70 million Nigerians to benefit from the conditional cash transfer. And that's what the president is targeting to do within the shortest possible time.
Well, Honorable Minister, the question I want to ask now is a little, interesting.
Yes.
Is culture likely to play a role? Is culture likely to influence this digital process? here is what I'm asking. Over time, every time we have, we're talking about population census and the rest of them, and by the way, I'm still wondering how we're able to determine all of that without a significant population. So, a population figure. So, every time we talk about counting people, population numbers and all, there is always that interplay of culture, of the influence of culture, the impact of culture. There are some things, some people cannot come out because of culture, some people cannot be identified, some people cannot be counted, you cannot see their face and all those things. So how will this impact on the numbers? Because in some states, for instance, they'll probably say, because of our culture, some things cannot happen. Because of our culture, some things cannot be allowed. So how do you navigate that in the states where that is likely to play a role?
For now, we don't have that problem because, like I told you, we've captured 19.8 million household leaders, including even capturing the household members. So what we captured is not just household leaders, that's the caregivers. We captured including even the household members. That's why I'm taking until we're targeting almost 70 million people, because over 70 million people have been captured. Because if you go to a house, you capture the caregiver, and the members of the family. And so we've not had any challenge with culture for now in what we've been capturing. And maybe if we have in the future, we can navigate it. But for now, we don't have a problem with that. And the reason is because, like I told you, if you go to a community, you divide the community into women, into men, and into youths. So the women on their own will sit down and select the people that are having this challenge. So we don't even select the people. It is a community that choose people who are poor in their community, and they give us their names. We only go to their homes now. When they give us those names, we can now go to their home, access their homes, and they capture their identity and their data. And that's where we come in, to go to their homes and do the data capturing. And for now, we don't have a problem with culture.
Now, how about population? There are those who have said that we don't even have a significant, reliable data, so to speak. So, on the one hand, how do you think, how much impact do you think the lack of a population sensor figures over the years has impacted on this? Because there are those who are just wondering how we are able to rely on speculative data. A second leg of that is the NBS figures of, I think, 2022, talking about multidimensional poverty and the percentage of people that are multidimensionally poor. And with the fact that Sokoto State alone has more than 95% of the people said to be living below that are said to be multidimensionally poor, just one state, and quite a number of states, in the country like that. How significant are those figures for you, the one that exists and the one that we are still working to get?
Yeah, when it comes to what we're doing, Ayo, we target people who are under extreme poverty. Multidimensional poverty talks about several indices, like access to education, access to water, access to credit, access to several, even access to sanitation and the rest. But where we come in is people who are under extreme poverty, that if you don't actually pull them out of poverty, it may affect their livelihood. People that their livelihood is affected, is challenged by poverty. These are people who are targeting. But multidimensional poverty we're talking about is that you look at access to education, you look at access to health, you look at access to water, access to infrastructure, access to several things. So you now use these indices to judge the multidimensional poverty. But we discuss in my own ministry, we target people who are under extreme poverty, because the multidimensional poverty simply means that we transfer it to several ministries. Minister of Health, Minister of Water Resources, and if you look at it also, most of these indices we're talking about are actually with the state government, not even with the federal government. If you look at sanitation, it's with the local government. If you look at water distribution, it's with the state government. If you look at land for agriculture so that food can produce, it's with the state government. If you look at health, the primary and secondary health centers, they're with local government and state government. If you look at primary education and secondary education, they're with the local government and state government. So the multidimensional indices for judging poverty actually on the decks of the federal government. It lies majorly with the state governors and with the local government chairmen. So we target people who are under extreme poverty so that federal government can come in to intervene so that we can pull them out of poverty.
It's a very significant one, Honorable Minister. And quite a number of times you've talked about poverty in our conversations since Kayla has been asking you questions. And
yes,
you have also lent your voice to every tanker explosion due to fuel spill in different parts of the country, in Niger State, in Enugu State, you have lent your voice. And there are those who would say, and of course, you put quite a lot of the responsibilities on the states, and rightly so, because that's what the Constitution says. However, people still go out, and when there is an oil spill or a fuel spill on the streets, do you really, is there a nexus between what people do and poverty, or it's just, what do you make of it?
Now, Ayo, we've tracked the events of this issue of scooping of fuel, and it's been a long-term challenge in Nigeria. It has spanned years that once there's an accident, sometimes even a foodstuff, people just rush and carry the foodstuff. And it's not just today, not just 10 years ago, not just 20 years ago. So what we need is more or less an orientation of the people, especially when there's a fuel tanker explosion, like the one in Suleja that took place. When it happened, the vigilantes in the community came and fenced off the place completely and avoided, to avoid explosion. But suddenly, some people came from within the community and overran the number of vigilantes they have there to scoop the fuel, and we had what we had, and we lost almost 90 people in the course of in that incident. And the one in Enugu, we lost about almost 10 people. So we keep on having people from the economy to everything, and that's why the president has just set up a committee to look into the remote cause and look at how we can reduce those incidences. And I'm sure the committee will look into the details of that and see how we can profile solutions to that.
Honorable Minister, at the end of the day, it comes back to the people, and there are those who have also pointed to road networks and all of that. But just one last question from me for now. You were talking with Kayla earlier about the disability in Nigeria, and my mind just went to disability in rural Nigeria. Yes, I know states, have their own responsibility, but then there is first of all, the level of awareness. There are those who just live with it and say, look, it's just the way God wants it. People don't even know how to relate with people living with disabilities. What's the effort that you think both your ministry at the federal level and states can execute to ensure that at least there is enough awareness of how to relate with people living with disability in Nigeria, particularly in rural Nigeria?
We want to set up, if you look at it, some state governors have set up a Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. But the commissioners came over to us that they set up the ministries and there's no mandate given to them on what to do. So we set up, we work with all the agencies that we have and all the community of vulnerable group that we have in the country to set up what we call the Humanitarian Council of Nigeria. So we are meeting on that. Already the World Bank, the United Nations, other communities are working on it, along with us to ensure that we get that done. And that will help us so that we can respond to those needs, so that from the state to local government, the response should not just end at the national level, because it's like the response about disability and about a vulnerable group lies only at the national level. If we can have what we have at the national level repeated at the state level, so the state level can have their social safety nets. They can also have their conditional cash transfer. They can also have their vulnerable group grants. Because they can also have, their loan scheme for the vulnerable group, so that we have the intervention across the country. So the federal government comes in. If you ask what the state can do, we can repeat the same thing at the local government level. If that is done, we can move a lot of people out of poverty, and that will provide a lot of safety nets.
That's a very important part of this conversation. And I don't want us to end this conversation without talking about the 2025 Humanitarian Needs and Response Plan.
Yes.
That collaboration between the federal government and the United Nations.
Yes.
129 million people living below the poverty line according to the World Bank.
Yes.
Statista says, rather, 88.4 million Nigerians in extreme poverty.
Yes.
Then the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics says 63% of Nigerians, that's 133 million people in multidimensional poverty.
Yes.
This year, with this plan, the Humanitarian Needs and Response Plan between the federal government and the UN, in fact, I was listening to it, and Mr. Fall, who's the UN representative, he said we need 910. He said we need $910 million. Just for the Bay States, that's been Borno, Adamawa, and Yola.
Yes.
$910 million.
Yes.
Where are you going to get your funding from? Do you have enough funding to be able to do all these projects? And with the economic situation that we have in the country, how is your ministry going to manage poverty in Nigeria?
Actually, if you look at it, that's why if you look at the data the president gave us, they are informed data that the president gave us to do. For example, targeting 15 million households, multiply 15 million by the average household, which gives about 70 million. It means that he's targeting 70 million Nigerians with conditional cash transfer. That's only one aspect of a target. He also asks us to target to create 2 million jobs. And part of it is, he asks us, the government procured items for empowerment to set up community, to set up a bit small, micro and nano businesses. And we're also deploying, they're already procured, they're already in our possession already. So what's left for us now to do, conduct training, conduct deployment, and also integrate them to the market space and private sector.
So 700 million naira for 15 million households.
You say?
700 million naira for 15 million households?
No, rather, if you listen, 75,000 naira per household.
75,000 naira per household.
Targeting 15 million households.
Okay.
75,000 naira targeting 15 million households.
Okay.
But each household has an average of 4 to 5 people. Multiplied by 15, you have roughly about 70 million Nigerians being targeted by Mr. President. Which means that if you go for roughly about 80 million people, about 70 million people are targeting under only one aspect of it.
I mean, the accountability part of this will be very strong on you. I understand that. We need it. Is it going to be digital? Is it going to be on the web? How do we get accountability?
And that's why I'm telling you that it's going to be clearly digital.
Okay.
We're not going to, and this time around, like Mr. Jake said, we're carrying the CSO along.
Okay.
So that all the payments we ask them to verify, they can do a follow-up behind what we're doing, so that we can have some level of transparency with what we're doing.
Honorable Minister, there's never enough time. There's never enough time. I've realized this, but I really hope we get to see you again.
Thank
so
you.
We can talk a little bit more about some of these projects that you have for 2025. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Nentawe Yilwada, the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. That's a conversation we've had this morning. All right, we'll go on a short break. It'll be time for Business Morning. John Mekwa will be on, and that'll be after these commercials. We'll be back at 9:30 with more conversation. Please stay with us.